Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our panel today. Had a bit of a trip here. Well, it says that, once upon a time, a smart man said nothing, but today we'll try to be smart by saying relevant things on the topics of IP, Web3, and Metaverse. And I'm very happy to have with me today two amazing ladies that are builders and that will essentially contribute to the conversation. And I'll ask each of you to do like an ice-breaking 30 seconds introduction. Tamlyn.
Yeah, hi everyone. I come from kind of the boring world of traditional finance, but got into building some of the early DeFi back in 2018. I got involved in that market back when it was the last bear market, very bad bear market. And since then, I have been, really going alongside the DeFi world, but also following all the other things happening in Web3. And over the last 3 months, I have co-founded a VC that is very focused on the Metaverse. And not only the economic system that comes from, the DeFi side of things, but also considering how our human entire experiences will change, probably, in my opinion, gradually over time as we become more and more digitally immersed. And I find it very exciting that crypto, blockchain, Web3 gives us completely inverted models of ownership. So really excited to talk about that today.
Thank you so much. Lili.
Hi everyone, my name is Lili, I'm the founder of Genera. And a bit about my background, I come from science, then I decided to become a fashion designer, then I realized it's killing the planet, so the only solution left was to become a digital expert, as you do. During my journey, I created immersive projects, a little bit of Web3 as well, hence I'm here. And then I realized that there's a huge gap on the market because at the moment to create virtual content, it's highly technical, both for businesses and for individuals. So platforms need to be built that enable audiences to join the user-generated content creation revolution. While I was lecturing at a number of universities in Europe, I realized that actually at the forefront of this is Gen Z, an audience that's radically different. And my personal relationship with them as students and friends inspired me to build a company that's called Genera today. We are democratizing, hopefully, virtual self-expression by enabling everyone to build, customize, wear and share virtual outfits, first in our platform and then hopefully across other platforms. I'm really excited to be here today and hopefully I can give some Web 2, Web 3 and Web 4 insights to this discussion.
Thank you so much. So let's start the conversation around the idea that in the future, right, we're building for the future, but we're essentially executing for today. But in the future, there will only be two types of jobs, which is going to be jobs based on technical skills and jobs based on creative skills. So this means that the whole virtual world, metaverse, immersive environment will be kind of at the forefront of the technological movement, which coincides for the very first time in history with the artistic movement, right? So before, back in the day, we had, let's say, the Renaissance, and then we had, the Industrial Revolution, and they were not quite in sync. But today we have a technological movement, which is the whole idea of public ledgers and, encrypted communication methods, and then we have the creative side, which is essentially attracting creators and offering, the whole digital economy, the creator economy, and offering them the opportunity to really do something and not rely on third parties. So in that sense, I want to talk a bit about, because we discussed about the IP, which comes from brands, personal brands, creators, and technology creators. IP is like the glue for everything, right? Because people need a sense of identity because they don't have an identity anymore. So I want to talk about that and what are your thoughts, where the metaverse sits in relationship with IP, with identity, with being a creator or a programmer, and that in that sense.
Sure. Shall I start?
Yeah.
All right. I think let's start, from my perspective, with identity. However, I was wondering, when you mentioned how technology is enabling more and more things to do for businesses and individuals, I was thinking of numbers, because Industry 5.0 is a very interesting tendency. If you are familiar with Industry 4.0, I thought I'm already up to date, and then it turns out there's a 5.0. And that goes back to the individual. 4.0 is about automation, digitization of processes. It originates from manufacturing, obviously goes hand in hand with technological advancements, but then Industry 5.0 actually goes back to the individual. There are lots of things around, the future of work, AI and its implication on the future of work, but ultimately it all goes back to the individual. And I think Rox's kind of topic is also all about the individual, because in this digital landscape, in today's world where we're building platforms for the future, as much as we need to think about businesses, I think we need to start to think about individuals instead. Businesses and users are all the same in some way, because we are all becoming content creators of our own. And when that happens, and because our online presence is increasingly important, I think it's really important to ask, what is digital identity at all? Why should we talk about it? Why should we care? We all generate some data footprint. So I wonder, what are your thoughts, Tamlyn, on what digital identity could be or is?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think there's already a lot of experimentation in the current digital realms, with people having multiple identities and experimenting and being comfortable with that. And I actually personally think that's a really fantastic thing. Something that I think a lot about is maybe to pull back to what you were saying, Rox, about the fact that in this future you've got technology and you've got creativity. And I do think, and I'm very excited by what Lili's doing in her projects and many others around enabling and empowering an explosion of even more creativity. Because the way our world currently works is, it's always known it's difficult to make money or a living as an artist. I think that changes massively, and I think I'm influenced by the fact that I've worked on the financial systems of this future kind of metaverse. And the reality is that once money is data, it can move very quickly, and it can be transferred very quickly and be used as a form of voting, as an exertion of taste. And we already see that with the purchasing of digital art. And so what I'm really interested in is, to see how there's also possibly even now, but I think there will be increasingly so, an emergence of curation, and curation as a sort of industry, and kind of following your taste, making money from your taste, and finding your clan and finding your people within that. But that can also happen all very quickly. It can happen across multiple identities. So I think the notion of identity, the notion of creation, the notion of curation, I think it all changes as we move into the digital world. The concepts that are the same, but the pragmatic way we see it play out, I think is really exciting.
Yeah, and I think in this sense, because we're moving towards a virtual world, or even, just Web2 world where people create, right? You have influencers, you have personal branding is bigger than anything else. Essentially, people create, so then their identity equals their intellectual property, essentially, online, virtually. And this creates a very strong need into, first of all, protecting that identity and that intellectual property, but also having the tools to lend it out, borrow intellectual property. Because just a bit of a side note, and I know Turkey is one of the countries that is heavily involved into outsourcing and freelancing and the whole digital economy landscape. And one of the main issues of any kind of freelancer or individual contractor is that essentially anything they build for their clients, they're giving away their intellectual property. So most of the contracts you sign, essentially if you're writing an article, you're a ghostwriter, it's gonna say, well, essentially this article belongs to me and you have no right to use it to further advance your outreach, your business, etc. So it's a bit of a, I think this is where probably having an open ecosystem like a metaverse, right? Or having web3 where you have, NFTs as certificates, NFTs as essentially IP or a representation of that IP. These can play a massive role for creators, for digital creators, for digital builders. So I would like to understand, from your perspectives, because you have totally different perspectives. Lili, you come from digital fashion, and Tamlyn, you also come from the, derivatives, DeFi, and the investment side.
Okay, well, we'd had a very interesting conversation a bit earlier at lunch about, in specific to our platform, for example, users will create things that didn't exist before, which means that they generate intellectual property. I don't fully agree that digital identity equals with IP, but then again, is there any IP lawyer in the room? Because perhaps we might need to ask them first.
Feel free to disagree.
Okay.
We can talk afterwards.
Yeah, another one. I think, again, there's a very good quote, I need to just find it, which kind of describes, in my opinion, very well digital identity, which is really about the accumulated digital information or data that is generated when you're online, if that's fully an intellectual property or not. Debatable, but when platforms are intentionally designed to create, so for example, creator platforms like Roblox or like mine, then I think it's really important to make sure that we cover, as platform builders, all aspects of the content creation process so that our users are first and foremost aware of what they are doing and aware that they are generating something, and they are aware and they are safe because the platform enables this IP to be protected, which can be through Web3 tools like tokenization, authentication on the blockchain. For example, in our platform, I hope early next year we will enable our users to mint their virtual outfit creations, which could be the 3D file, or it could be actually just a 2D kind of texture maps of the files. If, let's say, you draw something on your t-shirt, then that drawing is, in a way, your intellectual property, which then translates into a file format. So my opinion is that platforms need to think of this. They need to build something around it so users are aware, and they need to incentivize users to care about it. Because I think even if on platforms there's information and structures facilitate this, users might not care. And I think they should. And I think it's the job of the platforms just as much as general media sources. So I would encourage anyone, if you're building something, to really think about how your users interact with your platform. Is there anything new being created there? How do you support them as individuals rather than just a user out of 100 or 1,000? Probably that's what I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love that. And the way I think about the IP creation, I suppose, is like what we're used to is a lot of that IP creation happening in terms of, say, real life sculpture or art, or, and increasingly over the last, 20 years, that being more digital. I think I'm very excited by, in another 20 to 50 years' time, how much of our creative process is quite natively digital. And by that I mean, like, I'm going to go back to the finance world to give an example, but like if you had a government that allowed companies to list their companies on their public stock exchange, but that the listing allowed a native token to represent that share, then you actually have a sort of natively digitally defined, company and share. And so I think of the equivalent, and that's very powerful for being able to be used, in the digitally native financial system. Instead of creating a token that's a mirror to represent something in the real world, the thing is itself the digital artifact. And so I think that as, art and even ideas and really any creative output of not only humans, but frankly in the future also AI, and digital creations creating, is going to be, allow us, I suppose, much more granular ability to assign IP rights, but also to to take one digital garment, for example, and assign proportions of the future sales of that digital garment to anyone who's contributed. And that's not a trivial thing to set up and do, and there's a lot of experimentation happening in the industry at the moment, but we will get there. And I'm particularly excited by the kind of art that will get created, or the creations, I shouldn't even necessarily call it art, that will be created in ways that we don't even know yet. So for example, I'm particularly interested in the idea of, wearables that are tracking our, body sort of movements. Perhaps there is art to be created from what my heartbeat is doing in a day. And I think that it's going to be really interesting, or kind of reading of brainwaves and so forth. And then how does that get incorporated into our virtual existence? I think there's so much experimentation and fun to be had. And that's the thing I think we should hold on to most, almost not take ourselves too seriously. It's really early days.
Can I add one thing, though? In the meantime, oh my God, by the way, EG experimentation, guys, go and try it. It's amazing. But I was just thinking that before immersive real-time engagement from business stakeholders to their audiences to create more engagement, they were more passive audiences. Immersive real-time technologies, even a browser-based experience or an AR filter or a gamified retail experience engages audiences and they become participants or users. And then the next level to that is where we're all headed, is the user-generated content creation revolution, where interactions are becoming creative interactions, so users create. So I think digital identities were the kind of reactions to these interactions, and then now they are becoming actual new content because of the creative interaction. So perhaps that's where I would partially agree with you then.
Good one. So we're at NFT Day, right? So I think it's really interesting how an NFT essentially is intellectual property because of the art behind it, and then the token behind it is just a proof, a cryptographic proof that I can send and say this is the original. So think of it as an NFT, the art, and behind it an attached cryptographic certificate that I just push to the network, right? And it has scarcity. So this goes into the whole engagement, kind of like the creator setup where there's a limit to how much you want to put out there, because if you lose that scarcity, you lose a lot of value, right? It becomes a thing that can be replicated. It creates, secondary markets that are counterfeit, and it's been a whole debate since Counter-Strike days with counterfeit gaming skins and so on. But I think with NFTs, it's very interesting that you have this, as I said, this cryptographic proof that says it is what it is. Yeah, this item is real. In the sense of coming from the creator, this has been created by the creator, and we can testify it with this cryptographic proof. And it's interesting how, because we were talking about engagement, how this all ties into the scarcity of an NFT collection that an IP holder puts out there. Essentially, it's a new form of, you're essentially creating a virtual tribe for a virtual nation. So any kind of NFT collection becomes its own virtual nation, so to speak, because only a select few can have it. And this really ties into what we were discussing during the break, that, there's kind of this layered society where a select few can access that, and we were wondering how this will tie into the whole metaverse play. So maybe we just go back to that discussion and kind of amplify it here for the rest of the audience.
Sure. So yeah, I think I'm quite interested in the idea that, okay, so as Rox said, we've got this almost club mechanic. So you can think of, for example, a DAO as a club with a token, or you can look at NFT collections and people who are buying them. Their access to purchase them is based usually on money, which, as Rox said, can be tied then to scarcity. So the combination of demand and scarcity. And so there's a lot of discussion at the moment around what utility that kind of club membership can have. So if you own an NFT, you get to go to a physical club perhaps, you get invited to parties, perhaps you can access a particular hotel in a city. You know, you're buying into a clan and an experience. And I just raised the point at lunch at what Rox was saying is there's a lot of consumer law out there that aims to protect people so that everybody can kind of access the basics of society from a fairly fair playing ground. So I was just musing over the fact that, you know, in 50 years' time, does this end up being, you know, what happens when there's almost like these mini nation states, but like lots of them, like maybe I belong to 50 of them and they guide my experience in life. And because digital artifacts last forever, you know, plausibly that becomes something I hand down to in my will, and then someone else picks up in 1,000 years in the future, somebody may kind of have that club membership. And it's just an interesting thought experiment that we were talking about. So I don't have any strong opinions other than to say, obviously, we shape our future. And so talking about this stuff is important, talking about it philosophically and ideologically as we're building, you know, societal changes, really, in what we're doing.
My view, apologies, but I cannot help, I come from fashion. My view comes from actually the physical fashion industry, where most of the bigger companies are still structured in a really hierarchical way, and on the top of it is one person, the creative director, who then takes all the credit, and knowing firsthand how it's the opposite of democracy there is, and it's so controversial because creativity is really what this is all about. I found it like one of my missions to disrupt these models and to hence involve decentralization in processes, but also democratic kind of voting systems, not DAOs, but our strategy on the platform is really, really iterative. It's always about hopefully asking our community what they want, what would they like to see, really let them drive the conversation rather than us. And so hence I'm a bit like double-sided when it comes to scarcity and limited editions, and, you know, only the selected few can have this. If you've been whitelisted, if you're on the allow list, like on our launch even the attendees will get a pop-up which grants them access to certain features in the platform, and I was wondering, why shouldn't everyone have it though? But then you lose the whole point of incentive, right? Because if you're not making it scarce enough, then there's not really an incentive there. So I find it an interesting thing to balance, to stay true to our ethos, which is everyone is equal and it's democratic, but then also bring value in by limiting numbers or, yeah, specific utilities. It's very dividing in me at the moment.
Very interesting points so far, and I know we have just 10 minutes left. I think it's interesting to look at, because, you know, digital consumers, we always talk about consumers. So obviously when you come to the web, you have digital consumers. Digital consumers follow IP. They follow their favorite brands. They follow their favorite sports team. They follow their favorite entertainers, right? Especially sports. I mean, sports is the biggest form of entertainment. So they follow that IP, and they want to feel part of that exclusive club, right? They want to feel part of the tribe. So they'll do whatever it takes. They will collect, I don't know, baseball cards that have a lot of emotional and psychological value for them, not necessarily financial, right? I mean, what are you getting out of collecting a card? But it helps you feel like you're part of something, because as we were talking earlier, people need that sense of belonging, and it's becoming very hard, right? In this day and age, we're losing, we're losing the things we can relate to, and it's insanely hard to connect with people unless we have hobbies, passions, and we follow the same IP, the same brands, the same sports teams, the same, So I want to talk a bit about how does let's say, okay, we're moving towards the metaverse, everything's virtual, we're building these virtual nations. How does the metaverse we deserve as digital consumers, how does that look like for all of us? And you can give me your personal interpretation as well as your business. Obviously, Tamlyn, you're also investing. Lili, you're building. So hit me.
Wow. Oh, okay, that's hard. Well, first of all, sorry about this, girls, but the ideal future of this whole unfolding landscape does not contain the word metaverse at all, because I'm very tired of buzzwords and what people associate it with. I think many things can not go wrong, but go off track, and it gets distracted by the buzz. What the key here is, how will we socialize, consume, and play as individuals as well as communities, and what would be the right way of going forward? If you look at social, and economical, and environmental tendencies in many industries, there's a lot of negativity going on. So if anything, I would like to see a digital unfolding landscape where, there is more space for all kinds of businesses as well as individuals to enter. We don't have to worry about, bigger corporations taking monopolium on a market and then killing other startups. Or as an individual creator, let's say, you can become as successful and earn a living just like a company. I know I'm an idealistic person and I live in a very idealistic world, but I think if decentralization can facilitate this, then I hope decentralization stays as transparent and as goal-oriented as possible, being not distracted by buzzwords and buzz trends, but really truly being implied or applied on processes where it's deeply needed. And I think it can be a better tomorrow then.
Yeah, I tend to think fairly futuristically, so which is how I like to think. And I definitely think in terms of, at the moment, the way we interact with brands is we might follow that brand, we might see that brand do some sort of product placement in a film, we might see an influencer promote that brand, and we start to develop a relationship. We have an expectation of how that brand should behave, what it should participate in, what influencers it should partner with, etc. When I think of the definition of the metaverse, and it's a hotly debated topic, but for me, what it really is a transition from where we are now, where there is quite a lot of back and forth between us and other entities on the web, but it's almost going into more of almost like a sensory response experience. So in the real world, when I'm talking to you guys, you're looking at my eyes, you're seeing my microfacial expressions. We've evolved over many, many, many years as humans to kind of interact and understand each other on levels that go far beyond our words, and even far beyond our sort of obvious and deliberate actions. And so when we're in a metaverse where a lot of that humanity is almost digitized, so we're seeing and responding to each other, but in these digital environments, and all of those responses are being captured digitally, analyzed by behavioral scientists, better understood. I think it does quite radically change quite a lot of things, actually, but in terms of our relationships with brands, I mean, somebody should just be able to see my eyes, how they change. Do they squint? Do they dilate? Do they, am I happy? Am I sad? And am I thirsty? What water do I like? Whatever. That's a very sensory response environment. How that connects back into the real world, how I actually get that water into my body, this is all very interesting areas of experimentation for me. Really interested to hear from anyone who's thinking about this stuff as well. But yeah, I do think you know, at the center of a lot of the power in the metaverse is us as humans. Over time, that will expand to be digital agents as well. I was going to just say one more thing about that. I've forgotten. I'll come back to it, but yeah.
Can I say, I know we're very, very short on time, but I just wanted to reflect on what you just said about data collection. We are responsive beings, be it a physical situation or a digital, so whatever device we are using to feed ourselves into these digital worlds, it could be a fully, tracking headset looking at your facial motion, or it could be just a phone where you're scrolling. We're all generating that data profile, which is in a way our digital identity, which is in a way our data footprint, which belongs to us, but is being also monitored by the companies who are operating software and hardware.
Sharing is caring.
So, point is, I think a future should be transparent. We should know about this. We should be able to own it and control it.
Oh, yes, I remember what I was going to say. You reminded me. I completely agree. I sort of have a theory that in the future, a big role for us as humans will be governance, because a lot of machines, a lot of, algorithms will be doing a lot of the work that we currently do, including, as I said, I'm from the financial system. I mean, increasingly, you have algorithmic entities, digital entities that are performing wealth management on behalf of humans, and I expect that to increase hugely over the next decade. But the really hard bit about designing decentralized systems of any sort, and I've really found this in DeFi, is the governance. Like humans, we struggle to do governance, and to Lili's point around transparency, like it really takes us understanding the system, having a lot of transparency, and we typically like to delegate it, but I do believe that to maintain the health of our systems over time, that's going to be a big role that we play. And I think that will feed into everything else we've talked about as well around IP.
Something to look forward to. Okay, 1 minute left. What do you not like about the current proposition of the space? One thing you don't like, that thing that you don't like the most, that people offer.
Dystopia. People think we will be sucked by in technology and we lose our physical abilities. Think of expansion, extending our abilities instead, positivity instead of negativity.
Oh, this is a tough one. I love everything in this space.
You do?
No, I think really, I hate when people are migrating the space towards being less democratic, less transparent, less sort of true to the ideals on which Bitcoin was invented, basically. I think that really bothers me, and it's often done in the name of this great new invention, but that new invention is actually going to rob a lot of people of liberty and a voice. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing that bothers me.
What is yours, Rox?
There's just too much BS going on. I mean, after 7 years in this space, you've heard and seen absolutely everything, and we're really looking for something fresh. So if you guys have ideas, do let us know, because we need a fresh perspective, and we need to look more at the younger generation, because they're actually deciding the future without us knowing.
Yes. Yes.
So thank you so much. I think that's a wrap. Again, thank you, Tamlyn, for joining us. Lili,
Thank you, Roxana.
please check out Full Stack VC and Genera and Metaverse's World, and find the hat and ask us questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.